That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Tax Collector, which will be available to stream on RLJE, courtesy of RLJE Entertainment, on August 7th, 2020.
This film's directed by?
It is the latest film directed by David Ayer, who... Well, we can get into it, but suffice it to say, when he's good, he's very, very good, and when he's bad, he's awful. And it stars Shia LaBeouf and Bobby Soto.
The film is about, it follows two gentlemen, played by Shia LaBeouf and...
Mr. Soto.
Their characters' names are...
David and Creeper.
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf is Creeper, and then the other one is David.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so David and Creeper are... like henchmen for a man named Wizard, who's in prison. Apparently he is sort of like the head of organized crime in Southern California. So he kind of manages like 45, I believe, like different gangs. So there's gang violence, but also like the sale of drugs. And he collects a commission, like a percentage, which I forget, I think it's 30%.
I think it's 30%.
30%
right.
From each of these groups. And Creeper and David go around and collect that money. So we find David sort of like questioning his... Because the opening scene is David with his woman in bed, and she has awakened from a nightmare where like she's in the ocean walking on glass. So clearly there's tension because they're in this very dangerous environment. But he has a sister who's about to have her quinceañera. So it's just business as usual when we see them. Like, you know, it's like a day in the life of two tax collectors for a gang lord or drug lord.
They're collectors.
When we're introduced to a man named Conejo, who is like a drug lord from Jalisco, Mexico, who has come in and says there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah, wants to crowd their territory. It's also important to note that... David's Uncle Louis, played by George Lopez, is kind of there to assist him.
He's the brother of Wizard. Mm-hmm. Wizard, we find out towards the end, is David's dad. Mm-hmm. But because Wizard is in prison, George Lopez's character kind of like runs things out in the field. Mm-hmm. So Conejo challenges Wizard, which doesn't go well because when David tells his uncle, George Lopez's character, he's like, well, don't worry, I'll go take care of it. Cut to George Lopez's head in an icebox. Mm-hmm. So that creates kind of a war. David takes short-lived one. It's a very short-lived one because David goes down there and just like everyone gets hurt. But in the melee and the subsequent sort of effect is that David's wife and kids are kidnapped, and Creeper, Shia LaBeouf's character, is kidnapped, skinned alive, tortured, and killed. So he has nothing to do but seem crazy. But we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. David enlists the help of some, like the leader of like a black gang, which I assume were the Bloods, or a faction of the Bloods. This man, for reasons that aren't completely clear, decides to help David. So he and some of his men go in to get back his wife and children.
And just the children, the wife's killed.
That's right, just the children, the wife is killed. He's successful in getting his children back.
One of them, I think.
Just one?
I think he gets only one back. Right. And it's also, narrative-wise, important to note that he goes and digs up a barrel in his cousin's backyard that has...
$1.5 million.
From a heist that he pulled with Creeper.
Presumably to use that money to maybe make a clean start somewhere.
Yeah, if they ever needed to. So.
Yeah. All right. So, should I just go through my notes and you can add to them?
Sure.
Okay. So the first note I have is, oh my God, the sort of like once we get into the workings of what Creeper and David do, there's sort of a montage of how they collect the money. Because the first question I had as someone who's not part of like organized crime was like, if someone is telling me like you're going to take 30% of my money, well, how do you know how much money I'm making? So sure. There's this montage of how the gangs sort of like keep track, which part of it is like those little cheap chocolate bars that kids sell. Like these people write information on these like chocolate wrappers and pass them to people in prison that then get passed. It was very elaborate and I thought stupid.
All these handwritten notebooks and yeah.
It just seems like for such an organized thing where they're collecting so much money and it's all so integrated, and you would think that there'd be a better way. And again, I don't know how this shit works. I presume the person who wrote this maybe also doesn't know how this works, because that montage...
Should we talk a little bit about David Ayer?
Sure. Well, but before you say that, I have a note that says this film feels like someone, like, you know, maybe a non-person of color would write this story who maybe is like adjacent to this lifestyle.
Sure.
Like maybe they read a book about gangs and drugs and decided they're going to write their own story.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, David Ayer became popular first as a screenwriter. And like he wrote Training Day. That was kind of what elevated him a bit. But, you know, he also wrote the first Fast and Furious and S.W.A.T, becoming a director. He did End of Sight, which I kind of liked. Sabotage, even with Schwarzenegger, had some nice elements. When he's focusing from the perspective of law enforcement, because I believe he is ex-law enforcement, his films tend to work a bit more. He also wrote Dark Blue with the Kurt Russell cop film that is, I think, kind of underrated. But lately, you know, he's done some films that don't work well, like Bright with Will Smith. And is it Joel Edgerton as the orc cop? Suicide Squad he did as well, which was also a film I didn't like. So yeah, I think it seems like there's a lot of conjecture going on here. It reminded me a little bit of films written by Taylor Sheridan as well, who wrote Sicario and Wind River and Hell or High Water, which was a film I liked. But somebody that was very well invested in the law enforcement community to the degree where there's a plethora of narratives and tropes to examine, but this feels very, very superficial, like on every conceivable level.
I have a note at the 13-minute mark. I wrote, this shit is so corny.
Well,
to give you a sense.
And then to learn that Shia LaBeouf, who we can talk about his casting too.
Well, my next note is, what is Shia's accent? So you had told me that he got a real life like chest tattoo.
Apparently, yeah, I read that he got.
Which we don't see because he's fully clothed in this sort of like dapper. He's dressed like the Planters Peanut Man throughout the entire film.
And has cauliflower ear.
And it has cauliflower ear. So I'm assuming those are prosthetic ears until he's kidnapped and tortured, and to which we can't see his chest because he's covered in blood.
So maybe got it. But you know, Mr. LaBeouf is always known for being method, and he, you know, for his last film with David Ayer, Fury, the World War II Brad Pitt movie, he pulled out his front tooth for that role. So it doesn't surprise me.
You know, you had mentioned that his character was explained as like a white boy who grew up in the hood, and that's why he kind of sounds the way he sounds. I mean, I can believe that because we have Michael Rappaport to thank for that, but his accent is not consistent.
No, it goes in and out, as in it's an adopted persona.
Which is very obvious and uncomfortable.
Yes, and his clothing, I think, doesn't quite fit
no.
that characterization. Like
I have another note that says, is Shia on drugs?
Probably.
And I don't mean the character, I mean the actor while he's doing this. Like, is he on drugs?
Perhaps. Which is unfortunate because, you know, I thought he had a really great year. I really liked Honey Boy, which I don't think you've seen.
And the Peanut Butter Falcon.
Oh, the Peanut Butter. Yeah. I think he is somebody that has kind of grown on me as a screen presence. But
my next note is, I didn't quite understand particularly the main characters and like his family. I didn't understand their relationship with money, because there are several scenes like David has a cousin who works and they own a shop that I'm assuming is a front for their like organized crime business. But he has a cousin there, and he finds out that she like took money out of the till, and she's like, "Oh, it's just a couple 20s. I'll pay you back on payday." And another note I have is his sister, who's having the quinceañera, they go to a dress shop, which apparently is like a fancy dress shop. And there's another family there taking too long, and they need the dress for tomorrow. So they call David to come and like rough up the people so they can be seen next. And it just seems so weird. Like, wouldn't they have had their dress, like, you know,
right?
This should have been sorted out a long time ago.
Sure.
If they have money. But there are several scenes. George Lopez gives David like a little bit of money for like what he says is beer.
The food. But then at the actual quinceañera, George Lopez's character hands them like 2 bands, you know, like thousands of dollars.
So their relationship with money seems very strange to me.
And religion and food, because Soto's family
is like cooking food for the quinceañera, which seemed really weird because even my family, who doesn't have money, had that shit catered. So I don't understand why.
Well, and not even the day of. They were cooking
they were cooking like the day before, but then we go to the party and it's obviously like an elaborate party. So that seemed weird. His relationship with religion seems very superficial.
Well, because they're very... I think that was somebody's intention to show the paradox of this lifestyle, I guess. But
another note I have is, I think if you think about like blaxploitation films from the 70s, that shit seems less corny and seems more authentic.
Some of them. Yeah.
Because at least the people in the film seemed like they were that life or whatever, they're not so far removed from it. But the characters in this film, a lot of people's like way of speaking seemed to go in and out.
Yes, it
was very strange to me. It didn't feel gritty.
No, it doesn't
in that regard.
And if you can't feel gritty, at least be entertaining. Which I felt neither of which.
I have another note that says Conejo, who's that new drug lord who's come in to take over. I wrote down that he's the Mexican drug lord Mother Goose because all of his lines he rhymes.
He does like to sing song. This is this actor's debut, Jose Conejo Martin.
I was also reminded of Bad Boys for Life. The Mexican drug lord, the lady in that film, and her son, and how they are sort of doing their business dealings, that seemed more authentic than this shit. And
well, I was going to say, like, speaking of blaxploitation films where they focus on the criminal, like Willie Dynamite, to me feels a lot more realistic than the tax collector. But, David Ayer's signature elements are on hand. Like, there's some very well done violent bits.
I have that note. The violence is well done. The action scenes are well done. Another weird scene is when David finds his wife has been killed. There's a scene where he like bathes her. Like he's bathing her dead body and talking to her, and his character is meant to seem kind of emotional because there's a scene where they go to collect money from someone who doesn't have it. Like he's hiding money, and then he explains, well, my kid has leukemia and we don't have health insurance. So I don't know what happened to Obamacare, but they don't have insurance. So I need this money. And he's like, well, prove it. And he's showing pictures of his sick kid in the hospital, and they're asking him like, when was she born? How old is she? Blah, blah, blah. And then David's satisfied. So he says, let him keep the money. So he's supposed to be like a sympathetic person.
Too sympathetic for that job.
I'm a little confused on where this like person, the characters.
There's a lot of, and I think this is where Ayer tends to stumble, is showing men being emotional. Writing because Ayer wrote the script too. The dialogue is pretty bad in some sequences.
My last note and my biggest issue with the film is right away when we realize what they're doing. Okay, if I'm like, you have 45 gangs who are all like these criminals, thugs, drug dealers, tough people, and then you have some person coming in saying like, all of you are going to give me 30% of your stuff. Doesn't it seem like these 45 gangs would be like, fuck that. Like, that is not how this is going down. We don't need you to protect us from each other.
Right.
So that seemed really weird to me. Obviously, I don't know if this is like a real thing that happens, but it doesn't seem real. My next thing was David, when he enlists the help of that one black drug gang leader, like, who's like from the Bloods, I think. I just don't understand why this man would help him.
I don't either. And then especially when he comes in, he's like, what do you need? And he's like, I need riders with heart.
I need riders with heart. I rolled my eyes so hard I fell asleep. But the backstory of that is there's a scene where David and Creeper go visit some like Latino gang, and there's this black guy there being like tortured. And the Latino gang leader says, he was like texting my girl or like sexting my girl, so I couldn't let that slide, man. So, and then David's like, no, we can't have this. Like, we have to keep order. Give him to me, and like beat up the guy who grabbed him. So then David returns the black gang member to his gang, and says like, hey, I took care of it, I got revenge, it's all squashed. And the black gang leader's like, yeah, we need to have like harmony. They shake hands, the end. So then when he comes back to him at the end for help and says, I need writers with heart, the black gang leader's like, let me grab my best man.
Yeah. Like,
let's go get your wife and 2 kids. Man, I was like, I don't give a fuck. That would be like an IRS agent who audited me, telling me that he needs a haircut. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm not helping you. Like, there's no way I would help you. So that whole, like, the entire premise of what these people do seems very, like, unbelievable.
Flimsy. Yeah, I think if it had been felt more contained, like it's more like by sections of the city or neighborhood even. I have no idea how.
Yes, had there been like sort of a gang, like a gang has someone who monitors everyone's finances. That makes sense to me.
Well, because even all the mafia movies, people have their own neighborhoods, their own turfs. I don't know why, and LA.
This feels like if you're gullible, you would be into this, but
some of the other bits of dialogue though, like everyone you know is going to die real bad. Was one, and then the cousin when she gives Bobby Soto a gun, it's got a lot of murders on it.
So Shia LaBeouf for sure is getting a Razzie nom for this. He's bad. It's bad.
It is. It's corny. But Mr. Soto, who we also reviewed in the Quarry.
I like him. He seems. I'm not gonna say what I really think about him, but his character. Both of them are a little miscast. I just think that he seems kind of like gay bait, but.
Sure.
Well, he's very attractive, and then they're making. I don't know. I just think both of them are very miscast. They don't seem tough. Creeper's character is just fucking crazy, and then Danny just seems like.
But it's also not crazy enough.
It's not crazy enough, but like for them being like these 2 henchmen, it seems. Except for Creeper being just crazy. But
they seem like 2 people that somebody else is like, oh yeah, I can take over from them. You did say you like the look of and I like seeing LA on film.
As a native Los Angelino, any film that showcases LA, and this film does an okay job showcasing LA, so that was fun.
Well, parts of LA we don't usually see on screen either.
Like what?
Like some of the apartment complexes and areas of LA. That we don't see a whole ton of. That it's kind of enmeshed in.
I don't know. I think what's that movie with Nicole? No, isn't like Nicolas Cage and Sigourney Weaver in a movie? Rampart.
Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrelson and who?
Sigourney Weaver.
I feel like if you take Rampart, Poetic Justice, Boys in the Hood. I mean.
Sure.
I mean, you've seen it all already, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy seeing it here. The film looks nice.
It was a lens by Salvatore Totino, who did Bird Box and Everest. Okay. Enjoyable-ish films, and the score was Michael Yuzerski.
Oh, the music! I liked the music, although I didn't think it fit most of the scenes. Like at the quinceañera, they're playing this like industrial, like trance type music.
Sure.
When I expected to hear banda, because they are playing a little bit of it at one point. I think the music is good. Like a lot of those tracks I would listen to. It just didn't fit the scenes they were in. What would you give this film?
And Jimmy Smits, of course, plays Wizard.
Oh, Jimmy Smits plays Wizard. What would you give the film?
I would give the film 1 out of 5 stars.
I would give it 1.5 out of 5. Okay.
You don't have to explain yourself.
All
it's
right.
your opinion.
It is my opinion. Bye.
Bye.